The Iona charging network is a new EV charging network that has a goal of deploying 30,000 chargers by 2030. We just visited their headquarters in Durham, North Carolina, got a presentation from them. So today I'm going to give you an update with all of the latest news from Iona, including their current status with number of stations and charge ports. So let's go. Hi, I'm Patrick. You know me as half of the electric duo. Liv is working her day job, but I wanted to sit down with you today, go over everything that we learned from Iona, and give you an update of where they are at the end of 2025. I actually created like a tracker so that you can sort of instantly find out exactly what their status is, see how they are doing in reaching that goal. So if you go to theelectricduo.com and go to the resources page, you'll find this link here. And basically when it comes up, it's pulling the live data as of whatever day you visit it. I have it updating every morning, and it will show you how many stations there are. So we also have a map here. The gray dots are like the older stations, and then you have the blue that are the like 90-day stations, and the orange that are their more recent stations that they just opened. I'm also, like, if you scroll down, you can see like I have charts tracking their growth over time. It's going to be really interesting to see this in 2026 because it has to climb quicker and quicker if they are going to meet that target of 30,000 charge ports by 2030. And I've seen some places on their website where they say by 2030, and I've seen them say in person by the end of 2030. Either way, that's really impressive. But this chart, this resource is available, and I also listed like the last 10 charging stations that they open. So if you're curious to see like where things are being deployed very quickly. And of course, like I mentioned, it's like I also compared them to like Tesla and Electrify America and EVgo. I may add other networks as we go along, but if you want, just bookmark this resource, check it out, and you'll always stay up to date. But now let's go back over to the presentation that they gave us. And this is part of the EV Media Day that they had back in the beginning of December. You may have seen some videos from Tom Malogny with State of Charge, Misco Electric. Kyle Connor was there with Out of Spec. I'm pretty sure they did an Out of Spec bits or something like that on it. But we were all there and all gathering information, and a lot of really, really great information was presented, but there was also like, just side conversations and things like that. And I want to report on all of that to you. So it was really cool to be able to attend that and get all of this information and talk to not only the people with Iona, but the auto manufacturers. They had representatives there from each of the 8 auto manufacturers. And if you don't know, the list includes BMW, GM, Honda, Hyundai, Kia, Mercedes, Stellantis, and Toyota. And it was also cool because they had cars from each of those manufacturers there. We ended up taking a Kia EV9 out to the Garner or Apex Rechargery and testing it out. So we'll have a video on that as well. But let's get into the meat of this presentation. And this first slide that they sort of put up was the IONNA Speed. Could sort of take it as like every company has their like little saying or whatever, and it's just a bunch of mumbo jumbo or whatever. But it really did feel like this is the heart of everything that they do. So when it first came up, I was like, yeah, IONNA Speed, they work fast or whatever. But it seems like they truly are by the number of stations that they're deploying and how they're getting some of this stuff done. But really cool to see, this is like their prominent decision, and this will be critical in getting that 30,000 charging bay target reached. They put a bunch of talk into they're really customer focused, customer driven. Again, these are all just words. But getting, talking to the people that were there on the ground with Iona, it really felt like they get this. They're all working on the same page, putting customers first, building out nationwide, not just going and hitting the urban areas. They're doing across the country, and we'll get into that as well. So again, like these are all just words. I was like, let's get to like the meat of it. And of course, like one of the first things about Iona is they called their stations like rechargeries. And then like the smaller stations that don't, really have like a building. In other words, they're like installed in the parking lot of a bank or whatever. Those are recharger relays. But they also introduced this new term to us, rechargery beacons. So they sort of, separated into good, better, best. So yeah, your rechargery relay, it may or may not have awnings right now. They did say that they're going to try to put awnings at every single site. Some of the sites you'll see now, they don't have awnings, but they have tried to, with the best of their ability, to plan it out so that they can put the awnings back in at a later date. And this goes back to that IONNA Speed thing where their priority is getting chargers in the ground. And if it's going to take longer to get the permits for the awnings, then they would say just like, let's just get the chargers in. We'll go back later and get the awnings put in, or the lighting even in a couple instances that we know of. So, good and bad is like, I want to see the awnings go in as a priority, but it does seem like it is a priority, but their higher priority is getting those chargers. So excellent to see that. The rechargers, we've seen a few of these. We visited one in Apex. These are taking like existing sites like the gas station in Apex, converting it over. Pretty good set of features, but then now they're talking about the rechargery beacons, and they just had the groundbreaking on the one in Westminster in California. It's going to have a building. They're going to like have seating. May or may not have a picnic area. This one in Westminster does. Basically a nice environment. They're going to do the landscaping. They're going to try to put them next to good neighbors. This one is next to an In-N-Out. They're trying to make an elevated experience and make it like the flagship locations for them. And one of the really interesting things about this one in Westminster is if you notice, the building looks relatively small. Well, it's 999 square feet. Apparently, if they go 1,000 square feet or more, their permitting and the review process with the local, municipality, Westminster, would take far longer. So the goal is like, can we do what we need to do in 999 square feet? Yes, let's just do that and get it done quicker. So again, that IONNA Speed, really cool to see that them making those type of decisions. They also, the beacons, they want to like make big signs that they're easy to find, give you plenty of chargers, over 20 chargers, and definitely have awnings at these type of locations. So really, really great to see the focus on these like flagship stations. Now, as they've been deploying already, they're up to 60 stations as of today. There's a lot of recharger relays, and I sort of assumed that they were going to do like 70%. We're just going to be just throwing these chargers out there. They say that's not the case. They actually want it to be like 70% are going to be rechargeries or rechargery beacons. So they really do want to have their own sites, that they aren't just chargers in a parking lot. So that's really great news, because then we get the amenities that we all want. And something else that they talked a lot about was providing those amenities. So they understand the things that we've all been talking about. It's okay, like when things were first being deployed, like, yes, we got a charger in the parking lot, but now that EV adoption is getting more advanced, we want trash cans, we want squeegees, and they understand that that's something that they should provide, and that they are figuring out ways to provide that. Because it sounds pretty easy, like we're just going to put some trash cans and some squeegees, but there also has to be services provided to empty the trash cans. If it's a busy holiday weekend, you got to make sure you have extra coverage because they're going to be extra used. You want to make sure that the squeegees aren't just a big bucket of dirty water, so those have to be changed out as well. So they are understanding what it takes to get those type of services deployed, and they're integrating that into their overall plans. They also highlighted one of their recharger relay stations, this one in Texas, and to sort of show that it doesn't just have to be chargers in a parking lot. So good signage, an awning. They want to make sure they have those amenities I was talking about. They have an accessible stall. They're going to have clear signage, so hopefully they won't get ice. They want to have a pet area and locate it next to something nice that you would want to use. So not just at the distant end of a giant parking lot, but this one is next to the Texas Smokehouse. So they really are, trying to make sure that there's stuff close by. And they mentioned like there's one location where they're putting in a recharger relay next to something that was a vacant restaurant for many months or whatever. But they, part of it is like as they were putting in the recharger relay, they sort of helped the process along so that restaurant is now going to be occupied. And now that provides an opportunity for a nearby service for the recharger relay. Not sure how closely they're, coordinating those type of things, but really cool to see that they are thinking about the local community as well. So it's nice to see like In-N-Out being targeted and like putting it next to In-N-Out, but it's really great to see those smaller, things like Texas Smokehouse or whatever local restaurant being included in their plans as well. One of the things that we were asking about, while we were there was like, are you leasing all of these places or are you buying them? And they talked a little bit about that, where that they are, whatever is at IONNA Speed. So in some cases, they're going to be able to find a spot, negotiate a quick sublease or lease of a piece of land and put in a rechargery relay there. Other cases, it's just quicker just to buy a piece of land. And they brought in the example of like sometimes it can take months to negotiate a lease, but that same piece of land, if you just want to buy it, it can be done, under contract in like 4 or 5 days. So they're sort of not taking a one solution meets all. They are looking at whatever is the best for that case. We also asked, for example, like if they're because they're partnering with Sheetz, like if there was a Sheetz at an interchange and also a vacant piece of land, which one would they want to put the chargers at? And they said it depends on the situation, and who knows, it could even be both. They could put some chargers at Sheetz and then put some across the street, depending on what that location and what the traffic flow look like. So great to see their flexibility being addressed in that way. And speaking of locations, they had a list of all of the cities that they were targeting, and they were talking about phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. I put some of that stuff online already. I'll put it up again here. Some people sort of took that the wrong way, and it's because like if you just see the cities, you're like, oh no, we're in phase 3, or oh no, our city isn't listed, and you think we're never going to get an IONNA station. But they sort of were like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 is like, it really isn't phases. Those are just like primary, secondary, targets that they are looking at. But it doesn't mean that they can't go outside of those target areas. It doesn't mean that they can't work on some places in phase 3 while they're still in phase 1. They don't have to complete phase 1 before they move on. So you can look at this list of cities here. Some of the phase 1s are already in progress, and you can sort of see that they've deployed in these locations. But you can also, like if you actually look at their current map, they've deployed outside of these areas as well. So that's something to keep in mind. If you don't see your city up here, don't be like, oh no, I'm not getting an IONNA station anytime soon. Also, just because the city's listed up here doesn't mean they're going to get like 30 IONNA stations. They said in some locations they may put 5, 6, 7 IONNA stations in an urban area. In others, it may take 20 stations. So again, they're looking at things on a case-by-case, city-by-city basis. But then here's the other part, and I probably should have put this up when I was sharing the list of cities, because I think this would have alleviated some of those concerns about where they're getting deployed. They sort of were like they're taking a 4-pronged approach to how they're deploying stations. So they are going after the MSAs, the cities out there, but they're also looking at corridors, because in between the cities, you need to have connections, usually interstates or whatever. So they are looking at building pathways, just sort of like Electrify America and Tesla did, of like in their early days, they were looking at like how can they connect using their network. So they are looking at doing corridors, very specific corridors. And again, I'm assuming that if they have Los Angeles and Las Vegas, they're going to look at doing that corridor. So that would make sense to me. Hybrid locations are just sort of saying ones that sort of, they're not necessarily in the corridor, they're not necessarily in the city, but outskirts. They're going to do some of those as well. But they're also looking at vacation spots. So, you know, maybe a couple of out-of-way locations or whatever. They know that like those are places that people visit, and they need charging when they go visit. I don't need charging around here. I need charging when I go on vacation. So really cool to see that they are, you know, have a bunch of different criteria. Something else that was brought up was, you know, how are they, you know, planning out stations in relations to where their competitors are at? Because there could be two strategies, and they actually mentioned on the stage that they are looking at where their competitors are at. And I said, does that mean you're trying to fill in the gaps of where they're not at? Or does that mean you're going to sort of look at where they're at and go like, well, if they're in Green River, we're going to go to Green River. And they said it's a combination of both, and other factors as well. And I'm sort of putting words into their mouth in this regard, but like looking at Green River, Utah, a station that we stopped at numerous times that has Electrify America, but now there's a Tesla supercharger that we can use there as well as Rivian. You may say like, should they not even build one there because the competitors are there? Well, they may, you know, if they want to put one in Utah, that may be one of the locations because there's a lot of power issues to some of the other little smaller towns. There's not even a lot of gas stations out there. I think there's like a stretch of like 90 miles with no gas or whatever. So that may be an instance where they're going where the competitors are at just because that's where they can go. But it may be they look at it and go like, we'll go somewhere else, like Fruita, Colorado, which is a few miles east, but sort of a good point if you're trying to go from Salt Lake City into Colorado. If you don't do Green River, you would do someplace just inside Colorado. So anyways, long story short, they had a number of criteria. They said there's not like a one size fits all. There's not a, you know, one particular type of site that they want to target. They want to look at what works best, and as long as it's checking a lot of the boxes and they can move on it quickly, they're ready to go there. I already mentioned, you know, them talking about buying or leasing, whatever is fastest, but they are also, you know, willing to go in with partners, and they have like Wawa and Sheetz that they are already partnering with. They had a representative from Sheetz that was talking about how great of a partner Iona is. And on the flip side, the Sheetz representative was saying, because they have other charging networks that they will work with, and they are sort of a little bit about agnostic about who they're working with. They just want to get chargers in the ground, and they don't want to build the chargers themselves necessarily. So if Iona approaches them and wants to put in chargers, they're totally okay with that. If it happens to be another network, they'd probably be okay with that as well. They're just working on expanding their basically customer-focused mission to include EV chargers in addition to gas pumps. So Sheetz is very much flexible on that. And on the Iona side, they're willing to work with Sheetz. They're willing to go across the street and build their own station, and they're willing to do both. Again, flexibility and the speed was something that was really key. Iona was also really boastful about the fact that they have 4,000 charging bays contracted, 500 bays already energized. Some of them actually hadn't had the switch flipped because of local issues or whatever. But now they are over 500. But to have 4,000 under contract already is pretty impressive. I mean, that's making a pretty significant dent in that 30,000 projection that they have. So really cool to see that. You can sort of see in their projected map of where some of these are under construction that they already have some of those routes I was talking and corridors. So you can sort of see the network is starting to take shape. Granted, you know, like up in Montana and North Dakota, there's not any there, but there's also, you know, no offense if you live there, far less EV traffic. So I'm sure they'll get there. It's not on any of the lists that you'll probably see, but they do want a coast to coast, north to south, east to west network, and they will get there. But for now, you can start to see like they're making a huge investment. They were just out here in California. They're literally, we went to a pre-grand opening at one in Oceanside, about 4 or 5 miles from us. There's actually one open in Vista. And that week they were sort of doing these pre-grand opening ceremonies and groundbreaking ceremonies all up and down California, in Sacramento, San Francisco, Westminster, kicking off construction or nearing construction of all of these sites. They're making a huge, huge effort in California. In San Diego County, where we're at, I think the first station has 10 stalls. The next one in Oceanside is going to have another 10. So that's great. I'm like, okay, 20 stalls in San Diego County. And they said that within the next couple of years, they want to have 200 bays open in San Diego County, which is absolutely fantastic. We already actually have quite a few: Electrify America, EVgo, Tesla, obviously. So it's great to see more and more competition come out here in San Diego County. In fact, I just learned this a couple of days ago, the Walmart that's basically across the street from us, apparently they just pulled a permit in October to build some chargers there. So we're going to have the Walmart charging network like a half a mile away from us as well. So really cool to see that being spent here. But with the map here, 4,000 bays under contract, really cool to see how quickly their network is growing from coast to coast. Now, you know, we talk about these charging networks and they're deploying very quickly. Right now, all the equipment is relatively new. So everything is hunky-dory, as we would say. But how are they going to maintain this network? And it's stuff that I have had concerns. We'll say Electrify America went through a rough period. ChargePoint has not the greatest reputation with maintaining some of their chargers because of some of them were privately owned, that not even owned by ChargePoint. So whatever. So like, how is Iona going to handle this? And they are very, very determined to not wait until it's broken, fix things before they're broken. So they have a very robust monitoring system. One of the things I asked about, gripes that I've had with other charging networks, are like, are you guys tracking first success charging? So they are trying to make sure that, like, if I have to plug in at 3 different stalls, and then the last stall I got to plug in like 3 times, and then I can finally charge, I don't want that seen as a successful charging session. I had a lot of failures and a lot of frustration, so that should be indicated in their key performance indicators. And they said absolutely, that they're tracking, like, anytime somebody plugs in, and it could be that they had an expired credit card and tried to initiate a charge or whatever. They still want to track all of that so that they can have accurate data and understand when things are broken. And they can do stuff like just monitoring the utilization. If they have 10 chargers and all of a sudden one is not getting any use, even if it's not reporting something with the system, and we've seen this in other charging networks. It's like, it could literally be somebody put a dumpster in front of the charger, and they have no way of knowing that. And they just sort of see it as like, we've had no failed sessions. They said that, the idea is like, they're going to monitor everything. So if, like, all of a sudden one is not having any charging sessions, they may want to put somebody on site. And that was another thing that gave me some confidence with Iona, is that they said they want to err on the side of deploying a technician. They will have their own technicians, but they are also working with third-party vendors, as well as Alpatronic, who makes all of their chargers right now, to have trained technicians from those companies and mostly from Iona to go out and take care of issues. And also sort of just to monitor the network as well, because they're still learning about, like, what works and what doesn't work as far as signage and whatnot. And I'll get to that in a second. But before that, I wanted to say one really great positive thing that I saw too was that they said they will take responsibility. They don't want to be in that game of blaming your car or blaming Alpatronic or whoever that makes the charger and saying, well, it's their problem, it's not us. We're waiting for their technician, their part. They're like, it's going to be Iona. We're going to own the problems in our network and make sure that they work. And if it is a problem with your car, a software update or something like that, that's the great thing, that they have the 8 manufacturers that are part of IONNA, but they are also very closely working with the other manufacturers as well, so that they can have that relationship and exchange that information and get things fixed with all of these other manufacturers. They also talked about their lab there in Durham. Any manufacturer can come in and test stuff using their lab. So of course the 8 auto manufacturers, you would expect that, but they were like, we're not charging anybody. So if Ford wants to come in and try out Plug and Charge, which now works with the IONNA network, they're like, please come in. They're not going to charge them, you know, an arm and a leg to come and do that testing, because they want the customer to be happy, even if it's not a member company like Ford. So very cool to see that. Also with the 8 auto manufacturers that are participating, they said that they have like mini labs in each of the manufacturers. We actually got an invite by Kia. Hopefully we'll arrange the details. Out here in Irvine, there's a Kia center. They have an IONNA charger that's, you know, behind the fence, private, offline for the public, but it's used for Kia to test out their software updates, their new vehicles, so that they don't have to go out and find a charger. It's like, it's right there. It's their like own mini lab, so they can test things out. If they do a software update, should never create an issue, but that's the way you make sure they don't ever have an issue, is you do that software testing before it gets out to the public. And really cool to see those manufacturers take advantage of that and have IONNA chargers available to them so they can test that stuff out. So as I was saying, they also are talking about like their learning from being out on site, so that they can sort of figure out like what's working and not working for the customer. So for example, I think one of the things that they've learned is like they have to be very clear in the signage on the screen, because some people get confused. They're like, do they plug in first or do they tap the screen first? So they try to clear up some of that language and update that so that it's very clear for somebody that's just hopping out of their car for the first time. Maybe they're in a rental, maybe it's the first time they've charged their own EV, but make it so that it's quick and painless, which is really great. They've also learned, for example, because the NACS connectors that they have, that it's going to work on any Tesla. And this comes back to where it's like a NACS connector is not a Tesla connector, sort of. If people have an older Tesla, like a 2017 Tesla Model X, unless it has the CCS upgrade, it can't use an IONNA NACS connector. So even though it looks like it would work, they can plug in, everything should just start charging, it's not actually going to work unless they get that upgrade. So IONNA sort of, you know, through watching and seeing where they've had failures, it was literally people with older Teslas going like, hey, I can plug in here. They now put up some stickers, some basically signage on the charger itself that says that. It also, like if you go into PlugShare, for example, it will tell you, this station has CCS and NACS. If you have an older Tesla, you must have the CCS upgrade. So those are the type of things that they are learning, that they need to basically better education for the EV drivers that are out there. And again, something else I think is really positive is that they are not just going like, we're going to publish this out there and the way it's going to be. I'm hoping that they're going to make some more changes. For example, we like all of the nerdy data that they have on their charging screens. So if I'm like watching the charging curve as it's happening, by default, it wants to revert back to like the welcome screen. I'm like, can we like bypass that and keep that screen up? And I think Tom and Kyle have made the same comment. So I was like, can we have like an out of spec mode that we can like maybe tap the button like 3 times and it'll keep that charging curve screen up so we don't have to keep going back into it. But who knows? We'll see. And many people are sort of associating Alpatronic with IONNA. Alpatronic is, being deployed at like BP Pulse and some Walmart stations right now as well. But a lot of people are like, if it's IONNA, it means Alpatronic. And, in the slides, they only mention Alpatronic, but it looks like they are open to having other charging manufacturers. And in fact, I'm not sure if Misco Electric included in her video, but she was telling us, after Media Day at dinner, is like, yeah, we saw some ABB chargers sitting in the back uncovered, but they didn't have the ABB logo on them. So if nothing else, I think Iona is investigating using ABB. They may have told Misco Electric something about their potential ABB partnership or no partnership, who knows? But it does look like they will likely have other charging manufacturers that they will work with. Right now it is all Alpatronic, which is great. I wouldn't mind seeing other charging manufacturers, but they also talked about like whatever they do, they all have to integrate into their system very seamlessly so that they can track the same data, report the same information, so that the experience for the customer feels the same, whatever the charging equipment is. You may have heard there's been a lot of discussion of whether or not they are going to do an app, and they have said, we are not doing an app. But then at Media Day, they said an app was not a priority, but some people have been asking for an app. So that's something that they may actually consider in 2026 is creating an app. Going back to IONNA Speed, it was quicker, get the chargers in the ground, make them simple and easy to pay with a credit card or your Apple Pay, Google Pay. So that was their priority, and they did not see the necessity of an app. But some people are requesting an app. For example, if you're in a rental car and you go up to a charger and you want to start charging, it'd be nice to have an app so that you can sort of track in the app what the charger is actually doing, because you won't necessarily have access to the EV car app. But they also said they are looking at other options, like in chargers in Europe, they'll put like a barcode so that if you tap and pay with your credit card, you scan the barcode, and then it basically links you to like a web page that will give you your current charger status, and it'll tell you, what charge state your car's at even. So there is the option of being able to do something like that without doing an app. So again, it's sort of like they're looking at it from all different angles and whatever they think might be most flexible and most useful for customers. I think they may end up doing both. I really don't want another app. It's like we have enough already. I generally just use the Ford app because it gives us access to Tesla, EA, ChargePoint, EVgo, Iona, like just so many different networks without having to have the other app. But I find myself, I still want to go into like the Electrify America app just to check on the chargers, browse around in that EA environment. So if Iona has an app, I don't want it, but I'd probably use it. So there you go. Some other insights that we learned from being out there is that they have board meetings. I forget how often. I think it's every other month that they're having these board meetings. All 8 auto manufacturers come in, and Seth, the CEO of Iona, is running them. And I sort of said, is it sort of like you have 8 bosses, or how does this all work? And from talking to the auto manufacturers as well as Iona, it sort of seems like Iona is in the driver's seat with this, and that the auto manufacturers have realized it's not to anyone's benefit if they try to strong arm or take over the Iona charging network and cater it toward just them. That they truly do understand that there is a benefit from just getting out of Iona's way, letting that team do their thing. And they brought up an example of if they are rolling out a new feature, and they didn't say what the new feature is, but let's just say it's plug and charge. If they're rolling out plug and charge and Kia can roll it out on their car first, they're not going to wait for Stellantis or Mercedes or whoever to also have that feature. If Kia implements it in their software first and it's working with Iona, they're just going to release it and say, let's go. And in fact, they said they start the board meeting with a chart that shows here's where each of the 8 auto manufacturers that are participating are in regards to some of the goals and features sets that they're releasing. So really cool to see that the auto manufacturers are staying out of the way so that Iona can just move at IONNA speed. Well, those are the major highlights that I wanted to go over for Iona. I may do this on a quarterly basis, semi-annual basis for Iona, because they should be growing so rapidly. I also thought about doing this maybe on the overall fast EV charging network in the US, or maybe focusing on like Electrify America, Tesla, sort of tracking where the major networks are going, please like drop a comment down below. Do you think something like this would be useful? Should we do these regular updates? Should we do other networks? What other networks should I include? And for that resource page that's on the Electric Duo that's tracking the major networks right now, again, I have Iona, Tesla, Electrify America, EVgo, and Walmart. Should I drop any of those networks? Should I add other networks? A couple of people have mentioned ChargePoint, adding ChargePoint. We have some difficulties with the ChargePoint data because there's some times where they have like 3 fast chargers. They count them as 3 fast charging stations. So it clutters the data a little bit, makes things a little bit more complicated trying to sort through that. But, you know, I could still include them. Some people have suggested like BP Pulse. So, you know, whoever else do you think I should add or subtract, just let me know. And again, if we should do these update videos on Iona and or the overall EV charging network or other networks as well. Anyways, thank you for watching this whole video. I'm very excited by Iona. I'm really excited for the one that's opening up here in Oceanside. Hope that they hit their target of 30,000, not because I'm loyal to them, but because charging options are always great. Thank you for our Patreon members whose names are scrolling across the bottom for supporting us on a monthly basis with a small contribution, as well as our YouTube members that are also doing the same thing and get little extra behind the scene tidbits and sometimes videos early. Thank you to all of you for supporting us in that way. But thank you for just watching, liking, subscribing, all of that good stuff as always. And as Liv would say, just remember, whatever you drive, however you charge it, enjoy the ride. Bye.